The highway was empty. A ribbon of black asphalt stretched beneath the silver glow of the moon. My car's tires hummed steadily against the tarmac, a low, constant vibration that filled the cabin with a sense of rhythm. Headlights carved narrow slices through the night, reflecting briefly in the patches of worn paint that marked the road. The world beyond the windshield felt distant, almost unreal, as if the darkness itself had swallowed everything but the path ahead. I glanced at the dashboard. Everything seemed normal: fuel gauge, speedometer, the faint green glow of the turn signals. But then, as I adjusted my grip on the steering wheel, a warning light blinked on. Bright amber against the black plastic. Passenger airbag. My stomach tightened. I shook my head, half laughing, half nervous. The passenger seat was empty. Empty. I had checked before leaving. No bags, no jacket, no one. The seatbelt hung slack, the latch clicking softly against the frame of the seat. I tapped the button to reset it. The light flickered, died, and then came back on with a stubborn insistence. My fingers hovered over the wheel, hesitant. Maybe it was a sensor malfunction, electrical, perhaps. Cars did weird things in the middle of nowhere, after all. But the longer I looked at that glowing warning, the heavier the seat beside me seemed. Not physically. My hand hadn't pressed it and I didn't dare, but in the periphery, in the corner of my vision, it pressed against some uneasy instinct. My heart skipped. A dull, insistent thrum pulsed through my chest, syncing with the hum of the engine. I forced my eyes back to the road. The highway stretched on, unbroken, with only the occasional reflector catching the headlights like scattered stars. The night air pressed through the slightly cracked window, carrying the faint scent of wet asphalt and pine. Somewhere far off, an owl's cry pierced the silence, brief and sharp. I told myself it was nothing. It had to be nothing. Still, the amber warning light stayed stubbornly lit, unblinking, impossible. A gust of wind rattled the windows, and I felt the seatbelt beside me tighten. Just slightly, almost imperceptibly. I froze, hand instinctively reaching toward the latch. The seat remained empty. I tried to rationalize it. The seatbelt mechanism was old, maybe jammed, maybe a contraction of the metal from the cold. Yet the weight of the emptiness pressed harder. My skin prickled. The hairs along my arms and neck stood on end. The dashboard's glow seemed too bright, harsh against the soft darkness of the interior, reflecting off the leather like a spotlight on a stage I hadn't meant to enter. The next mile passed in tense silence. I kept my eyes darting between the road and the seat. Shadows seemed to pool unnaturally where the moonlight failed to reach. Each flicker of the dashboard lights cast shapes across the empty upholstery. Lines and forms that twisted when I blinked, almost human in the peripheries. I shook my head, muttering to myself. I was tired. The long drive, the isolation, it was getting to me. My mind was playing tricks. Then came the subtle shift. I felt it first in the vibration of the car, a gentle, almost imperceptible nudge through the passenger seat. Not a movement like hitting a bump, not a tremor of the engine, but a deliberate weight pressing downward. My pulse hitched, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I tried to laugh it off, a tight, brittle sound, but it caught in my throat. My fingers tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. The seatbelt beside me tugged again, soft but insistent, as if someone were adjusting themselves into the space. I blinked. The dashboard light burned like a silent accusation. The airbag warning pulsed faintly in the dark. My rational mind fought for control. It's a malfunction. It's a glitch. Nothing is there. But the feeling of presence refused to let me go. The seat seemed to breathe, the leather rising and falling subtly under some invisible weight. My own reflection in the side window, the one I caught when passing a stray beam of moonlight, looked wrong. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw another set of eyes, reflected faintly, just behind my shoulder. I jerked my gaze back to the road. Nothing. Only the endless ribbon of black asphalt, the white dashed lines fading behind me. The wind outside picked up, brushing the car in hissing whispers. I tried to focus on the hum of the engine, but it felt too loud, too invasive, like it had been amplified to mock me. My knuckles hurt from gripping the wheel. Every minor sound, the creak of the frame, the faint tick of the indicator, the soft slap of the wipers against misted glass, became a chorus of unease. My mind began filling the spaces with possibilities, each one darker than the last. I noticed the small things, the subtle indicators that something was off. The seat adjusted slightly when I hadn't touched the controls. The reflection of the dashboard on the passenger window warped, bending in impossible angles, like looking at ripples in water. I shivered. The air inside the car felt charged, heavy, carrying the smell of ozone that wasn't coming from outside. Every instinct screamed to pull over, but there was no place to stop. Just the road, stretching like a throat down into blackness. I blinked again, forcing myself to focus. My hand went to the glove compartment, pretending to reach for something. Anything. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched from just out of reach. I exhaled sharply. My reflection in the rearview mirror caught the corner of my eye. For a split second, I saw the seat belt buckle rise on its own, as if someone had clicked it. The motion was deliberate, impossible. My heart hammered. I didn't dare look directly at the seat. I thought of turning back, finding the nearest exit, but the road refused to give me one. The headlights stretched ahead in unbroken streaks. Behind me, the night seemed to deepen, pressing closer. The dashboard light remained steadfast, warning me in silent insistence. I realized with a chilling clarity. The car knew. It was aware. A mechanical sentinel, and whatever or whoever was riding with me had already been acknowledged. I kept driving. My eyes flicked constantly between the road and the empty seat. The subtle weight persisted, now unmistakable. The seatbelt had curled around itself once, softly, as though testing my attention. The reflections twisted further, shadows that refused to follow physics. I could sense it there, sitting silently, patient, unthreatened. The hum of the engine sounded almost like a warning, a quiet, mechanical whisper that the car and its passenger shared some unspoken understanding. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. Time blurred. I didn't dare slow, didn't dare stop. The highway was a thin strip of certainty in an otherwise unknowable darkness. Every mile brought the same pulse of unnatural weight, the same persistent warning light. I felt trapped, not by the road, but by the knowledge that the empty seat was no longer empty. Not in truth, not in essence. Eventually, I understood something far more terrifying than the malfunction itself. This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't my imagination. Something unseen had taken its place beside me, and the car, my car, knew. It had recognized it, cataloged it, and left me alone with it. Not hostile, not playful, but patient. Watching. And now so was I. The dashboard's amber glow reflected in the leather, over and over, like a heartbeat in the dark. My eyes never left the road, but I could feel the presence behind me, quiet and heavy. I whispered a single, useless promise. I see you. And in that moment, the seat shifted slightly, leaning just enough to remind me that whatever it was, it had no intention of leaving. The warning light burned. I understood then, with a clarity that made my blood run cold. The car hadn't malfunctioned. It had informed me. I was not alone. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, but I no longer drove for distance or destination. I drove to survive, to endure the patient weight of the empty seat, which was anything but empty. Every mile confirmed the truth. The car had recognized its passenger, and so had I. And for the first time, I understood that some rides were never meant to end. The night had a weight to it, the kind that presses against your shoulders and seeps through the thin metal of the car. The highway stretched ahead like a wound of black asphalt, flanked by trees that had grown so close they seemed to lean inward, watching. My headlights cut through the darkness in narrow beams, bouncing off reflective markers that dotted the edge of the road. There was no sound but the steady hum of the engine and the occasional whisper of wind against the windshield. I'd been driving for hours alone, chasing some elusive turnoff, some faint memory of a place I hadn't been to in years. The road had been straight for miles, unbroken, but then it curved in a way that made my stomach tighten. I saw it before I registered what it was. A fork in the road, splitting the highway into two identical lanes, each disappearing into shadow. A simple split, ordinary, almost cinematic in its symmetry. I slowed, the tires whining against the asphalt as I approached the junction. And then I saw it. A car. Headlights on. Same model, same color, gleaming faintly in the dark. Approaching, slowly, almost lazily, as if the world had slowed to accommodate it. I glanced at my mirrors, expecting to see the road behind me clear, but the lanes behind were empty. The approaching car remained ahead, steady, inevitable. I eased my own car forward, heart thumping. The split yawned before me. I swore the headlights flickered like a pulse, synced to my own heartbeat. I needed to pick a path, left or right. My hands gripped the wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles white. The split widened as I approached, and I froze. Both paths had the same car driving toward me. Not just a twin, not just similar, identical. Headlights bright, reflections glinting off polished paint. The same model, the same make. They moved as if connected, perfectly synchronized, approaching in unison down both diverging roads. My stomach dropped, a sour weight pressing into my chest. I tried to reason. Perhaps my eyes were playing tricks. Perhaps fatigue had made me hallucinate. But the mirrors confirmed it. Two identical pairs of headlights, two identical forms, each on their separate path, moving toward me with impossible precision. I pressed my foot harder against the accelerator, trying to maintain some distance. The roads curved differently ahead, but the approaching cars mirrored my movement perfectly. I slowed. They slowed. I swerved slightly left. The left car responded, shadowing my movement like a predator rehearsing a hunt. I swerved right. The right one followed. It wasn't following me, it was anticipating me. I tried to turn around, to escape, but the highway refused. The curves repeated themselves, the trees looping in the same patterns, the same reflective markers flashing in sequence as though I had never moved at all. Every mile I drove felt like returning to the same point, the same junction appearing again and again. And there they were, both cars, emerging from the shadows like twin phantoms, synchronized to my motion, mocking my attempts at flight. The wind pressed against the car, making the windows tremble. The hum of the engine seemed louder now, invasive, almost aware. I glimpsed my own reflection in the side mirror. My face pale, tense, but then a flicker caught my eye. In the left mirror, the approaching car's passenger side mirror held a reflection of my car. Perfectly positioned, perfectly aligned. The right mirror did the same. Not just reflecting me, it reflected me moving, anticipating, shifting exactly as I did. I tried to look away, to focus on the road, but I could feel the synchronicity in my bones. My own car, the road itself, the approaching headlights, they were part of the same system, one entity fractured into shadows and reflections. Every instinct screamed to stop, to get off the highway, but the split repeated ahead endlessly. No matter which path I chose, there they were, both approaching in perfect tandem. Time became unreliable. Minutes bled into seconds. Seconds stretched into hollow eternities. The forest flanking the road seemed to twist slightly with each repetition. Trees bending at impossible angles, road signs showing the same numbers I had passed 3 or 30 times before. I caught movement in the rearview mirror, fleeting, as if my own car had appeared behind me, trailing, echoing my exact path. My pulse pounded in my ears. I reached the next fork, identical to the first, and the cars mirrored the split again. The left car mirrored my left, the right mirrored my right, headlights glowing faintly in the mist. Each fork was the same, the landscape looping, the shadows deepening. I tried yelling, screaming to empty space, but my voice vanished into the night, swallowed by the hum of the engine and the distant, impossible echo of headlights on asphalt. A sudden insight struck, chilling me down to the marrow. It wasn't just mirroring me. It wasn't just anticipating me. The cars were me, or I was them. Every movement I made was already known, rehearsed, and reflected back in this endless bifurcation. The forks, the approaching lights, the looping road, they were a record, a memory, a mirror of my own existence on this highway. The thought clawed at my mind, incoherent at first, then starkly clear. Whatever drove this highway, whatever split and replicated itself in the darkness, it wasn't separate. It was an extension of me, and I had nowhere to go where I would not already be. I tried to stop, to park, to abandon the vehicle, but the controls felt foreign, weighted. Every movement of my hands, every press of the pedal, seemed mirrored elsewhere. Somewhere in the approaching lights, somewhere in the twisting road. I looked in the left lane, and the car mirrored every twitch of my wheel. I looked right, and the same. Their headlights burned into my eyes like twin suns, impossible, eternal, aware. The realization solidified. The highway was not just a road. It was a mechanism for observation, replication, and inevitability. Every split, every fork, every choice had already occurred, had already been mirrored in the headlights that approached in perfect synchrony. I wasn't following them. They were following me, and yet, I was them. I slowed, then stopped completely. My car idled quietly, headlights casting a dim pool of light across the asphalt. The twin vehicles stopped as well, perfectly aligned, mirrors reflecting mirrors, reflections of reflections, an endless fractal of headlights and chrome. I could see myself in every surface, every angle, every line of the road. Not just reflected, but multiplied, fractured, woven into the geometry of the night itself. I exhaled slowly, the sound catching in my throat. I understood, finally, that the fork was no longer a choice. The approaching cars were not separate entities. They were extensions of my movement, echoes of my will, manifestations of the same consciousness that gripped the steering wheel. I was both driver and pursued, both the observer and the observed. The road itself had become a mirror, and I was trapped within its endless symmetry. I shifted slightly in the seat. The cars mirrored me immediately. I looked ahead at the split. Both paths stretched into darkness, identical and infinite. I realized there was only one way forward. Not to choose, not to flee, not to resist. To accept the reflection, to acknowledge the symmetry, and to become part of the endless fold of headlights and asphalt that stretched beyond comprehension. And so I drove, the two approaching vehicles moving in perfect tandem, perfectly synchronized. Every movement I made, they echoed. Every turn, every swerve, every breath was mirrored in the headlights that never wavered, that never blinked. The forest loomed, twisted, and the signs repeated in unbroken loops. The highway had no end, no exit. The split ahead repeated once more, identical, infinite, and I understood fully. The road did not exist without me, and I did not exist without it. The approaching headlights were not a threat, they were a statement. I was both the observer and the observed, the driver and the driven, the highway and the mirror, endless, eternal, and impossibly aligned. And as I drove into the twin headlights of myself, I knew I would never leave the fork. I would never choose. The road had already chosen me, and I had already become the road.